Welcome, everyone, to In the Hot Seat. For our repeat viewers, thank you for joining us again, and our fun little intro there. But I was just going to go past that, Jody. If you're new to the show, that usually doesn't happen at the beginning, but that's okay. Every 2 weeks, we put industry experts or customers in the hot seat for lively discussion, debate, even a little discourse, as we try to humanize the digital experience. And all aspects of the customer lifecycle are up for discussion, as well as the technologies used throughout each phase of the journey. This episode focuses on community-led growth, and we're joined by two experts, Jared Robin, co-founder of RevGenius, and Andrew Stapleton, growth advisor at Samwise Growth. Jody, you want to tell them a little bit about our exciting guest?
Absolutely. I'm super excited about this. We're going to have so much fun. So as soon as I heard this topic, I'm like, I know exactly who we need to get on the show. So we have a couple of awesome guests. Jared Robin is the co-founder of RevGenius, which is a 40,000 member go-to-market community. It's a community that I'm a member of and is amazing. He's done a great job with that. He is also a startup advisor and helps founders and go-to-market leaders go to market collaboratively. Joining in the discussion will also be Andrew Stapleton. Andrew has spent the last 15 years building and scaling go-to-market teams across 3 startups, including G2, which I understand, Michael, that's where the two of you
we met
time together.
Yep.
His last year at G2, he spent helping small tech businesses create and hone their first outbound go-to-market teams. And he just launched his own go-to-market consulting firm called Samwise Growth. He's going to continue to do the same approach there. So
that's cool. Yeah,
it's going to be an awesome discussion. I'm excited.
I think it will be interesting. You know, I was trying to do a little research before we got into this, and I was looking for examples of companies that were doing some form of this community-led growth strategy. And it was interesting because I found 3 good examples, but all 3 of them came to it in a completely different way. So Notion, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard of anyway, it's a note-taking app, more than that really, but it's a collaborative tool, very, very good tool. Well, they actually didn't go into this trying to use community-led growth. They saw a community form around their product and went, hey, I bet we could leverage that. And they actually came into it with the idea of we already have one that's forming and we can leverage it. And then Gymshark, which is an athletic clothing company in the UK, they actually planned this from the beginning, that they were going to build this community and put all the tips and tricks and things around exercise and fitness and like ways to really draw people in with the content. And then Figma, which is a testing tool, UI tool. They actually built the community so that their customers who were using the tool, like illustrators, UX designers, et cetera, could use the community to showcase their skills and showcase what they'd done with the tool. So like 3 really different ways they got into it, but it all, really forms around this idea of using the community to leverage that for growth.
And that's one of the things that I'm excited to talk about, right? I still think there's some confusion around how PLG fits into a CLG motion, and is PLG really the start of a CLG motion? And right, it gets pretty interesting. I was doing some research prior to this topic as well, and one of the things that I found really interesting is that if you search for the 2024 predictions or 2024 drivers, I had to get to page 4 in Google before community-led was not one of the results. So, pretty timely to talk about this topic. And with that, I think it's time we bring in Jared and Andrew. What do you think?
Let's do it.
All
Sounds
right.
good.
Let's get them onto the stage here. Hey guys, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Michael. Thanks, Jody.
Happy to be here. What a nice community of folks.
We love our
good to work that in. We do love our community.
I had to.
So I don't know if you guys heard us when you're in the back in the green room. We were kind of talking about some of those examples and the research that I was doing, just trying to figure out like where's the pulse point in the marketplace right now as a go-to-market lever. Where does community fit? And I knew it was up there. I knew it was pretty high in the circles I talked to, but paging through Google and before it actually fell off that list was pretty impressive. I mean, this is the thing, right? So I think I want to dive right in and really get to, if we could first lay the foundation, right? Explain the concept of what community-led growth is and how it differs from those traditional growth strategies, and that's even including product-led growth, right? Let's lay a baseline here for our audience. Who wants to take that question?
I'll let Andrew start.
Sure. I agree with the premise you threw out, Jody, that I do think the PLG part comes first. Like, I think if there's not a community's got to be about something, right? So in my experience in tech, like if you're going to get together about something, it's normally about a product. And so, when I think of just PLG itself, I think like, I would only hire salespeople like if and as I have to. I can make friends for free, So if the product sells itself, then wonderful. And then so I do think it starts from that, and it's a validation of the product and the company. If you've got people who of their own volition want to get together and talk about it, I think that's great. I spent the last year at G2 going deep into the into the HubSpot ecosystem. As I thought over the weekend, like coming up to this show, I think that's like in my experience where I've seen the strongest community-led growth, not just for HubSpot in and of themselves, but for like corollary products and their resellers and their implementation folks. That's what's top of mind for me today.
So building on that, I agree. Community supports a product, but even more so, it supports a movement. Let that sit in. What did Notion do? That was, and by the way, Michael, I agree. Like their original head of community was really their head of marketing, Camille.
Yeah.
And she was using growth loops. But what's the movement Notion allowed? Notion gave access to everybody at $0. We talked PLG to build businesses, to really build so much on their platform, share it with others, and do all that. Figma. How intuitive is it? Does anyone here even know what the options are outside Figma? I'll tell you, they're owned by Adobe, and that deal, rest in peace. If you don't know Adobe, which by the way is 99.9% of GTM professionals, you're not. But I bet people have played around with Canva and Figma, right? That are GTM, etc. Certainly Canva. Community support movements. Period. Companies that create movements and throw community behind it are going to be much more successful than companies with a product that throw community behind it to sell more of that product. B2C is so potent with communities because even more than movements, there's social impact movements that B2C does that B2B hasn't. Case in point, like Nike's ambassadors help not Nike causes, like help things that Nike supports, code, like different empowerment type of things. And you have like Tom's, which has social impact built into the product, and Parker, et cetera. So just taking a step back, just to add a little power behind community. If it's supporting a movement, it's a whole different world.
Well, when businesses try to go into this intentionally, what are some of the challenges they face as they're trying to transition to community-led growth? And, how do they overcome those obstacles? And I know particularly, Jared, one of the things you mentioned, and we were talking about this earlier, was attribution. So maybe we'll start with you if you want to work some of that in there too. But I'm just curious, like what kind of problems and how do they get past those?
Yeah. So in B2B especially, having that attribution with your community efforts to driving revenue is hard. if it's supporting PLG, sometimes it's a little easier to draw that line. But if it's supporting like a traditional sales process, it's like what came into the pipeline, how did it come in, etc. And now you have community transcending platform. And what I mean by that, community isn't just setting up a Slack group. The last 12 months or the last 24 months, for many, it felt like that. Sure, that a Slack group is a place. That's a place for your community to live. But that community also lives on LinkedIn. They also live in email. They also live in person. How can you attribute what to that? So some, of the best folks in this space will go down to the post level, like where we talked about. Will be feverishly good with UTMs and links like that. But I think it's important to sell leadership on the idea that there's going to be some not attributable things, and look at like the groundswell as a whole versus tit versus tat, every single deal. Oh my gosh, 2023.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that 2023 worked against community, and it's been proven. If you stack different community activities on top of each other, they're going to have a magnified, not just like a 1-1-1, like an infinite potential impact. So that's my 2 cents.
It's interesting,
a big one.
When you start talking about the channel, because anytime I have conversations around community, in a lot of people's minds that translates to, send me a link to your Slack group, right? Community equals Slack group. And what you're saying, Jared, is critical, right? It's not just a Slack group. There is a lot that goes into building a community movement. This is not a set it and forget it approach, right? This isn't build a group somewhere and let people come together and have a conversation. I mean, there's a lot of work that has to go behind this. So
the biggest movements in the world, like, are they just in a Slack group? Black Lives Matters. That's just hanging out in Discord, right?
Right. It's crazy though, right? Because I don't know, when you're talking with some of the marketing leaders that you talk with as well, when you were getting your groups going, every time I talk about community, someone's like, "Oh yeah, send me that Slack link. Send me the Slack group." And it's like, it's not a Slack channel. That's not community. That's our way in which, one of the channels in which we are communicating, but that's not the community, right? So I'd love to kind of dive into that a little bit in terms of what goes into building a community effort, and what do you have to think about as you're setting down and doing this strategy?
Couple of things that struck me, Jody, when I hear that, like, and I'm sure I've asked that before, like, send me the Slack link. It's because I want to get like a feel for the texture of it, that's almost like an inbound, because I don't like any, I'm a part of many communities. I'm not a part of many communities, right? So you want to get a feel for it. When I think of a community, I think of it's an organism, right? It's not a tool that's controlled by a creator. It's more like you're lucky enough to help spin something up. And when I think of a challenge and something, I guess, to know when you're going in with the purpose of, I want to create this thing, and just coming from sales, is like, I think as soon as you look at it as like a sales tool is when the air starts to come out of the balloon. Otherwise, like, you don't want people to feel used, especially like if it's coming from your company. I'll just tell a quick story. This I think the best example that I saw in 2023, again, this is in the HubSpot space. I was working with all these HubSpot implementers. One of them is called Rev Partners, and started by a couple of guys, Matt Bolian and Brendan Tollison, who I got to know over the course of the year. So they, like many others, grew a very successful consultancy, but they started to have community. They're a fun bunch. They do a lot of fun things, and they just got a lot of people talking, not about them, but about how to best implement HubSpot, what verticals to break into. Like, they all want to get into real estate, which is really hard, but no one's elbowing each other out. They're all talking to each other about how to get in. And they created this thing called Sprocketeer, And I know about this because they asked me to speak at the Sprocketeer Lounge at Inbound in September. And I was like, oh, what is this? And they're like, this is our community. And as I went there, I scoured the whole area. I think I found one tiny little Rev Partners logo hidden behind a podium somewhere. But what that showed me was that they created something for its own good, for the good of the community. They did not try to like leech off of this community. They did not try to sell. They were happy to include competitors, non-customers, things like that. And then I've seen other communities that, have not done that, I think that's a good thing to know when you're going into build. You're going into build something that should exist of its own, not to really be used.
So there's some great conversations going in the chat channel, and I want to bring up one of the questions so we could get to Matt's question here. One moment.
Danny did a good job here coming back in.
Oh, I haven't scrolled down on the bottom of the comments here, so we'll circle down there. So how do you inspire people to connect your brand community without caring about the platform?
Well, do people need to be? Do they need to be on your platform? If you need Figma help, hell yeah, you got to be there. If you need HubSpot help, I mean, you could go to one of the partners, sure, but like if you're trying to do it, there's ecosystems for that. But if you need general RevOps help, you're going to go somewhere else. You're going to go to RevGenius. You're going to go to LinkedIn, and you're going to network with people. So it's HubSpot. That's a little more of a HubSpot example. They're going to go to those platforms, and they're wonderful at this, right? But going back to the original question, which just left for the screen, how do you get people to connect to your brand community without caring about platform? It's giving them what they need where they need it. Okay. Sometimes they need to come to you, oftentimes not. Right. There's some, a HubSpot user. There's some RevOps principles that somebody that builds on Salesforce might be able to help them with. Imagine that.
Yeah.
And might be able to help them better because maybe they've dealt with much more people. That Salesforce person isn't in that HubSpot environment, but they are on LinkedIn, they are on RevGenius, they are on Pavilion, right? So it's up to that community to figure out how they could have a stake post, whether that's a person in there, whether that's a sponsorship or a connection on LinkedIn, which is a little more free flowing. Maybe that's having ambassadors there, and HubSpot in particular, they're evangelists. And we spoke about this, in preparing, like Christina Garnett, who is leading them, did a wonderful job of organizing people on Twitter. Sometimes there's a RevOps question on Twitter, and all these people are coming to bat. So don't force them to be where they don't need to be, and be everywhere they are. And this morning on a team meeting, we were talking about doing activities in particular on LinkedIn that meets our members there, but also our gaps that they have all across. And we're presenting that type of content in certain networks so that they engage and maybe do things around our brand, right?
Yeah, one of the things we used to years ago at IDC, we built out a practice around social tools and that sort of product line that was coming out probably 15 years ago or so. And one of the things that, as we worked through this more and started to try to understand community and why communities grow, it really did sort of come down to this balanced value proposition, right? If I get value, I'll give value. But if I'm just giving value, I don't want to be a part of your community. I want it to be balanced. I want it to give me an opportunity to do something, but then I'm willing to help. I'm willing to contribute as well.
I think you said the word, Michael, help, right? Mm-hmm. People who are in a community help each other, right? We're all there to help each other succeed, grow, answer questions. And I think there was a post that I made a while ago on LinkedIn when talking about community, right? To me, you are successful. A community is all about showing up when you're needed. When somebody posts a question and you have an answer, or you can point somebody in the right direction, it's not necessarily leading someone to a product or to, a brand per se. I mean, that's not what it's about. It's about being able to help someone else with not expecting anything in return, right? It's showing up. That's, to me, what makes a community successful, when the members willingly step up and help with those answers and help guide you down a right path. I mean, the communities that I've been involved with, especially in 2023, have been critical in helping me kind of forge my new path, doing what I'm doing now, getting me, hooked up with the right resources. I mean, that's the power of community. And now I'm in a position where I'm like, okay, when something comes up, I remember who helped me, point me in the right direction, got me the resource that I need, right? I mean, that's the power.
I like that. I like that.
That's a new tagline. There's my hashtag. Just show up. There we go.
So
Go ahead.
building on that, if you show up, you're going to be seen. Don't ask for anything. Here's a real life example of a community, not RevGenius, that I've showed up in and helped and volunteered. The Beehive product. It's a email ESP for creators. They're growing really fast. I think that they're probably at like 6 to 10 million ARR within like 18 months of raising Series A, which is pretty solid. And they launched a Slack group. I told them to maybe think deeper, but fine. They launched their Slack group, and it's phenomenal. And I raised my hand and I said, I'd love to volunteer to be a community manager. And I just started helping people. I saw a gap there, and I'm like, hey, who here wants to create a mastermind like once a week? 1,000 members plus. It's going to cost nothing. We're going to have a private channel, and I just took initiative to do that. And we're hopping on Zooms and helping one another. And this is building a stickiness to their brand. And, the newsletter I have on the side is building a stickiness to that in the process, even though I'm not asking anybody to sign up. They're all seeing me. They're raising their hands. They're like, oh my gosh, Jared, you're killing it. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm just helping. And
Showing up
at a bigger scale as a brand. Brand is just people, right? It'll work.
Michael, I was going to just go right into the next question that you and
I was. Yep.
Go ahead. I'll let you go.
No, that's exactly where I was going. Was in there.
All right, go ahead.
Lead up. Oh, well, okay. Well, I was just gonna, because as we're thinking about this, and you're if you're intentionally thinking this is a strategy you want to use, how do you integrate that in with your sales and marketing efforts that you're already doing, and then what is the plan? What's the cohesive growth plan look like?
I like well, I mean, Michael, I was reading through the article that you wrote for Arian a few days ago, and that what stuck out to me was, so if I'm in sales and marketing, I would like to use the community to kind of test, to test my outbound. Like I said, I'm very sensitive in like using the community as a tool and like kind of hurting the thing that we worked so hard to build. But I do like the idea of saying like, hey, we're thinking of that, maybe not the scale of a rebrand, right? But we're thinking of launching into this market. Some of you are in that market. Some of you know people in that market. Like, give us your advice. Like, what do you think of this approach? What do you think of this deck? What do you think about this, line of sale? Because I think if you've got a true community, that's operating on the principles of Jared, like you said, hey, we're here to help each other, and kind of including the originators, and that they're about the truth, that they would give me honest feedback. I love that idea. And the same thing, the points you make about like beta testing, like, hey, we've actually built something, can you give us really honest feedback, because that should be the best place to go if I'm building something to sell outside of my community, which I need to exist and grow, right? You got to test it inside first, and then trust those people to give you like the God's honest truth about it.
I couldn't agree more. And don't sell people. That's big. How could it integrate with the sales and marketing plan without you selling people? Sounds counterintuitive, I know. and on Andrew's point, like, we're looking for ambassadors. What's the point? To market, right? But doing a post where you're just very open and seeing like, hey, who here wants to get better at this LinkedIn thing and wants to be a part of our ambassador group, like, and help support us grow, and we'll support you grow. It's not for everybody in the community. If you start sending blanket things in for everybody, that's when you're going to start churning people. But you could do a post like that, or reach out, or onboard people in a certain way. Like, hey, would you be interested in providing feedback? And then you just go to those people, and then you just do as much good as possible as you can. But then, like, some companies that I really love how they do with community, and they're in the sales and marketing, companies like Apollo and Chili Piper, they build community advisory boards with the people that they're the closest with. They're like, do you want to be a part of this? And here's what you're going to get if you're a part of it. And everything from lifting you up on social, to speaking at events, to free entry here, to swag. So the people that sign up for that, it's mutually beneficial. And I think that's the key thing. Anything you do as sales and marketing needs to feel collaborative. And how I define collaborative is good for the individual, not just the company that they work for.
I got to do this last year. So I started a very small sales team to sell basically audience data. So I worked for G2, that's where I met Michael, and one of our products was buyer intent data. So at the company level, who is shopping in your category of software, for instance? And we had not really pointed at the services market, and so I raised my hand to say, like, hey, I'll give it my current job team. Give me a couple of people to build this team. And so we brought on about 30 or so customers, all in our own sweat, which we were very proud of. But I saw the opportunity just coming from a customer success role. I was like, this isn't what I was thinking at the time. And it's a micro example compared to some of the things you were talking about, Jared. But I was just like, hey, everyone signed up for this product because they wanted to grow more and faster. And they wanted to go from customer-led referral growth into outbound growth, right? But no one knew how to do this. Like, they didn't know the basics because they just relied on referrals. And so myself and my two team members, we did know the basics and more, but we knew that some people were good at some things. Some people had doubts in other areas. So I sat down with a spreadsheet of every customer contact I had, maybe like 70 people or so. And I split them into 3 groups because some would be okay with talking to competitors, some would not be. And we just had these little, they're like micro community sessions. It wasn't about G2, we didn't try to sell them anything. We just want to get them together. And I would start with like, Bob sees this opportunity, has this challenge, and just see what they would end up talking about. And I got overwhelmingly good feedback that it's like, hey, we liked that opportunity. And then they would talk outside, I guess what I mean there is, like, if you want to start something, it's got, like, you can't get to 100 before you get to 2, right? That's an example of how we got to like 30 from 0. And it was super fun to do.
Yeah, I'd love to dive into the skills needed to build out this type of motion within a company, right? Are there specific skill sets that someone needs to have that's going to run the community? But before we get to that question, just something I wanted to piggyback on what you said, right? Trust is huge in communities. Like, I don't go to a browser anymore and type in my question for what I'm looking for. I go to my top 4 communities and ask my question. And then I get the response from people that I trust because I know these individuals in the community. I built a rapport. I know the foundation and the what everyone in the community is talking about. They're my new Google, is the community.
Yeah.
And I think that's really fascinating when you think about the both positive and negative implications of that in a marketing strategy, right? We spend a lot of time making sure that we are high for organic search, and right, so we're organically ranking. Well, are we putting that much thought into the community that we're building for our company? or the community that we're building
So-
for our brand?
Not enough people. And even everybody loves tactics as well. Loves them. You want to do an influencer campaign? How much can I pay for what type of ROI?
Mm.
Man or lady, you're paying a human. Like, collaborate with them.
Yeah.
I always use the example like Michael Jordan and Nike. That was a true collaboration. What happened to both? Depending on my audience here, like that's obvious.
So from the person, let's say I'm a new company, or I'm a company, not even new company, I'm a company, and I want to go down this path of community-led growth. What's my team look like? What does the person that's running that growth initiative, what skills do they need?
Why are you creating it first? Why do your community members need a community that you're building?
So you're saying first step, ask the question.
What, you just want to create redundancy and not like help? Like nothing will say I'm trying to sell my product more than creating the same exact thing that exists in the market for the same exact people, but with your name on top.
He just put you in the hot seat, Jody. How are you going
He
to?
did. I know
You flipped that really well.
that
That was good.
Like that's my first question. Why are you doing it? And there's always a reason. But if you're not being thoughtful about the reason, because we need another GTM community. Huh. No, we need so thinking about RevRoom as somebody that built a community that has the RevRoom members in it, RevGenius. Why do we need a leader community? Is it because we want to make money because it's a paid community? No, in fact, went 3 years without doing that, but realized in the space that some of the other communities that have leaders in it weren't always satisfying the needs. And so, like, how could we niche and create something that's going to be different? And realize that we weren't satisfying the needs for the certain members. So we built something, and because it was like that, it felt like it empathized with them. So to answer your question, Jody, empathy.
I think just if I get like smaller and practical in tech here, I'm always good at thinking like at the movement level, right? For better or worse. But if I wanted to do this, it would be because I was at a disruptive technology company just to start, which probably most of us are, I would assume. And if you're in one of those and you have a good product, you have a good company, then you're going to have customers or even prospects, just call them clients, whoever, if it's a freemium, paid, whatever, who see an opportunity for using this new thing, but like they can't get their minds all the way around it. And you can make the assumption that they feel alone. It's like, oh, I can't figure this thing out. Am I dumb? Are there other people that have this problem? And so I come at it from the customer perspective because that's the teams that I've built. Then when I see them, and this is a very, it's a loving, it's a selfless thing. Like I want to get them together because then two good things will happen, right? One, they will help each other. And then two, I will not be doing something like inorganic and, kind of gross, like pointing someone at someone else to like sell for me on purpose at scale, like, which is why it's also, if you're going to do this, you have to have, and this has to come from the top, like you have to have some courage, some fearlessness, because you're going to get people together who will by nature discuss the warts of your product and company, and if you're not okay with that, like, I don't think it's going to go well. If your CEO or if your marketing team are too control hungry, like, then you're not, I would say, like, you're not ready to do it, because some laundry is going to come out there.
I want to add in, as you're saying this, like, and that's all spot on. I want to point out two specific purposes of community for a company. One is to generate demand. One is for customer success and to generate demand. Is your community made up of people using your product or not using your product, or both? Right? Both would be probably generating demand. Could potentially be both. And I think they're two very distinct communities. So like my example in question was more for like the generate demand, because that's something like they're not in your product, whether it's paid or not, right?
Yeah.
Period. So you have to be even more nuanced, even more. Oh my gosh, I don't want to, like, if they're in your product, even if they're not paying, Notion's the perfect example. It's a little different. Now, if they're in your product and they are paying, you know, like a Gong community, a Clary community, I believe that's just product people. I know certainly. Then there's a customer success part of that, which is really big, and there's like a how to, and so, you know, I want to point that out, because I do think if you have a product like HubSpot, you absolutely need a customer success community. Like you need to give support to your people. There's 14 million ways of using HubSpot. You don't have to hire somebody. You could figure it out on your own.
That's I think a really important thing to point out on having customer success, right? Because that community then essentially becomes your support channel.
Yeah.
Right? Forget going to a support portals, forget logging a case, logging a ticket. The first place people are going to go to is your community.
Which is amazing if you can do
That's
that.
a good thing.
You know, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And you want them to, like, so in the Beehive community example, like I have community members helping me and the team is out of it, right? Like with certain things, and sure, they run agencies, right? Because those are the people the most helpful. Let's use the HubSpot example again. Those people will jump in. There might be a chance, but they're also really genuinely helpful people.
Christy has a great point that I want to pop up here, because I think this says a lot, right? They point out the warts. Those are the pain points.
Yeah.
And if we think about what that does to us as product leaders and thinking about where we need to go, you're right, Christy, right? That's where the innovation really kind of begins, and we're getting that true customer feedback.
And I mean, up front, Andrew, you talked about this some, and we've hinted around this, and this seems like a good time because I'm really curious about this. What does this look like when you combine PLG and CLG? Like, how do these work together, or do they? I think they do. And you know, how would you implement that if you're gonna do
that? I look at them as like they're almost like organic outcomes. Like with PLG, if your product's not good enough to have PLG, and you say like I'm going to implement it, then it's like that's just the way that I hear that. It's like it's an admission that our product is not good enough to attract people without highly paid sales and marketing. So we really have to rethink the product. You know, that's how I receive that. I haven't been able to think of it any different way. And I think the CLG flows from that. I don't know. Jared, what do you think?
True PLG is hard to create.
Period.
Let's assume that you have it and you're doing well. Let's use our Notion or Canva. You're in the product. Having that support network that helps you better use so how can you benefit? Canva, Airtable, maybe not. Yeah, Canva does. Airtable, Notion, and some others give you templates that community members created right when you get on as starting points. If you were given Notion without any direction, wow. Now, let's say you're given Notion with the direction that their early team had, like 12 ways Notion uses Notion, which I'm pretty sure is a blog post that I found and I've tried to like pull from. Yeah. That's great too. But like, that's not for everybody. How can you like Notion's a database as well? Like, how can you like get in and plug everything in? So having community members, taking templates for community members, why is this good for the community member whose template it is, right? Because we want to be mutually beneficial. Well, they're getting seen. They might be selling templates or something outside of that one, but their brand is being built. And so I think the template growth loop, in particular for Notion, was really, really massive. And that was a growth loop involving community members, where people would sign up, see the template, use the template, share the template with more people. Like, hey, do you see how I'm running OKRs on Notion? You could run OKRs on Notion. Yeah. Oh wow, I'm using a software that's $100 a month a user. This is 10. That's awesome.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So that loop in particular was like Notion's most potent community-led growth loop, or at least their first.
So getting to a point of clarification on this one, Stephen LeMay, who's a frequent viewer of our show, hey Stephen, he wants to kind of dive into how do the concepts of community and ecosphere interact? So Stephen, I'm guessing ecosphere meaning ecosystem, more the ecosystem and community, and how do those two interact, right? Are they one and the same? Is community something that will naturally evolve out of your ecosystem, right? When you said, Andrew, you were talking earlier about the HubSpot ecosystem and the Salesforce ecosystem.
Yeah.
All of these there's communities that spin out of that ecosystem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I liked what Jared brought up, and maybe that's a good point of distinction. You know, like I spent I spent my last year and a half in ecosystems, and we had like ecosystems in the pipeline. Like, when are we going to do the Marketo ecosystem? When are we going to do the Adobe, other ecosystem? But Jared's point about like, yeah, but when you need to break out of the feature set of an individual technology just into, the movement that we're behind, or the problem that we need to solve regardless of the technology. Like, I really like that definition that he was writing of community.
Community and ecosystem. Thank you, Andrew. Like, it's funny when I speak with all the nearbound or partnership or ecosystem people, we speak very similarly. Like, I'm pretty sure we just have different narratives, to be honest. Like, it sounds like I don't want to use semantics because it's not. There's distinct purpose, but it's more similar than most would think. How does community and ecosystem interact? It depends on what you empower it to do, right?
Going back to your point,
you could empower it to do anything. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Going back to your point, to me, it falls out and achieves one of two things. It's either helping to generate more demand, or it's helping to be your support channel. Right? A community within an ecosystem is doing one of those two things.
Yeah.
But Salesforce is an interesting example of something slightly different that occurred, right? They built out this trailblazer, and it is community, but it didn't really start as a community, right? It started with, we want to train people with skills to fill holes in the customer base because these are valuable and we don't have enough of them. And it turned into a community of people who are really passionate about that and about those jobs and about what difference that training made in their lives, right? So that's an interesting kind of different sort of application, but it ends up in the same place because of that tremendous value they got out of that interaction.
Go ahead, Jared. I don't want to speak over you.
I want to bring up an interesting point, because we've talked a lot about HubSpot and Salesforce, who I believe are two of the most powerful communities for reasons that we haven't discussed today, even. Okay. For the obvious reasons, agreed on all of that. HubSpot and Salesforce. Salesforce, I don't know the number, but there's more money floating around in the Salesforce ecosystem than on Salesforce SaaS alone.
Yeah,
that's a fact. It might be a really big gap. They're making people money. What did I say about Notion? Ability to make people money. What did I say about Beehive? Who's helping others? Agencies who could stand to make money. HubSpot, who are their top evangelists? With me now, all their agencies, right?
Yeah.
I unpacked this like a month or two ago as I was like diving in thought process wise to my collaborative growth newsletter and category I'm thinking through. The most powerful and the evolution of community is creating spaces that allow the members to make money off your product. That doesn't always happen, but if you could think like that, ClickUp. You can't do. Hell yeah, ClickUp's hard as heck to use. Their agencies are like incredible. I tried to use it like 5 times. It's the best thing on paper that I can never stand up. And Zapier, like, how many things can you plug in? Like, don't worry. I Zapier, there's people that are creating like a new category on their own, like automation, RevOps automation and stuff, right? Like just that, not like the whole. So anyway, I just want to point that out. We haven't dove into that, but if you could create ways for your members to make money, where do you spend your time? Time is money, as cliche as that is. Where you could generate the most, especially in a B2B world.
Okay, so you just brought, yes, right. We didn't hit that side of the conversation. We also didn't hit, there were like 3 other prep questions. So here's what I'm saying, gentlemen. No, in a good way. Here's what I'm saying. We need a second session on this because this is
I think we do.
hot topic. I need you both to come back because we are unfortunately at time, and I wanted to talk about KPIs and everything else surrounding
revenue is the KPI, right?
Yes, we absolutely need to. So I'm going to put you in the hot seat now and ask the question. Jared, Andrew, will you come back and join us for a second session?
Yes. I'll do it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Whenever you say.
Awesome. All right, folks, that is all the time we have today. Andrew, Jared, you both survived the hot seat. To everybody watching the show, if you think you have what it takes to be in the hot seat, let us know. We definitely want to hear from you. That's it for today's episode of In the Hot Seat. I'm Jody Spencer.
And I'm Michael Fauscette. Tune in next time for different faces, different topics, and different perspectives as we put someone different or maybe the same in the hot seat.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.